The NBA 2K franchise is honestly such an important one for my life. NBA 2K11 was my entry point into the world of basketball, becoming the reason why I ended up playing the sport, which essentially changed my teenage life from being a bit more introverted and staying mostly at home to being more outgoing and socializing with friends. So it's no stretch to say that NBA 2K changed my life, but it's also one of the worst game series I've ever played. Now, if you enjoy NBA 2K, great. I'm not telling you to stop. This is just my personal gripe, and I encourage you to hear me out before you start crucifying me in the comments. Now, to illustrate the relevance of NBA 2K, let's take a look at some financials. According to Take-Two's 2023 annual report, two franchises made up the biggest chunk of their revenue. The first being Rockstar's more than a decade-old Golden Goose, GTA 5, and the second is NBA 2K, specifically NBA 2K23 and 2K22. In fact, the NBA 2K series holds the largest share on their revenue. So we can kinda see from this that the NBA franchise is actually no slouch when it comes to bringing over a lot of players. So how bad could it possibly be? The answer:
do you think 2K is focused on making a good product or making money?
I don't think they're ever focused on making a good product.
I think in 2024, it's only making money.
It's just money.
is that it's quite bad. And I'll tell you why. Now, 2K's formula for NBA is inherently pretty okay. In fact, it's a lot of fun, especially as a basketball fan. It's really easy to get into and learn the controls. You can play with friends, you can create your own player and get drafted, you can manage your own team. There are so many aspects to the game that keep people coming back, including NBA players themselves. So what exactly is my problem with this franchise? Well, to illustrate this a bit, let's take a look at 4 clips from NBA 2K21, 22, 23, and 24. And I want you to tell me off the top of your head which NBA 2K is which. Did you get it? Now, if you're saying that you know which NBA is which, either you're lying or, damn, you're really spending a lot of time on these games. In which case, kudos to you. No, but seriously, my problem with this series is that they're all essentially the same game. You can barely tell the difference year to year aside for a few small tweaks. A couple of touch-ups here and there with the textures and character models, maybe slight adjustments to the movements and animations, new licensed music, maybe more glistening sweat on the player's muscles, which is cool, I guess, but not exactly groundbreaking. To be fair, they do introduce major changes from time to time. NBA 2K11 was the Michael Jordan edition, allowing you to play the best games of his career. 2K14 introduced the Park, which is the My Player hub where you can interact with other players and play online. NBA 2K16 had Spike Lee direct the background of the character. You kinda get the point, right? There are times when many cool stuff are being introduced that are objectively really exciting in theory. But the problem with a lot of these improvements is that the better ones are only done sparingly, and the ones that do get added year on year most times only play a small part of the experience and aren't really explored more in later games. I personally liked how they introduced more commentary and the pre-game shows that simulated inside the NBA, but a lot of these get pretty repetitive, and so the novelty does wear off over time, especially if they reuse some dialogue in multiple games. In some cases, they actually hamper the experience of the game, like The City, which personally feels like an unnecessary way to bloat the game. I and many other players just want to play basketball, and it's really annoying to see this kind of gameplay padding that I already don't like to see in regular RPGs, let alone in a basketball game. Every year you're buying what's essentially DLC type content and visual patches for $70, which is the current base price of the game, with the Hall of Fame edition being $150. Now, the argument I expect here is something like Apple's business model. How come people don't complain when Apple releases the new iPhone 17 Pro Max All-Star Edition? Now, don't get me wrong, I personally do not like how there's a new released Apple device every year. But at the very least, I don't expect that support for my current device will suddenly stop after 1 year, which is what usually happens to the rosters and the online servers of NBA 2K games. And it wouldn't have been so bad if the quality kind of just stagnates. But the unfortunate thing about 2K is that things tend to get worse. With inflation, the obvious thing that gets worse over time is pricing. NBA's pricing model has generally followed 3 tiers over the recent years: a standard edition, a mid-tier upgrade, and a premium anniversary or Hall of Fame or insert legendary player edition. To me, the upgrade that kind of gives you some form of value is the Hall of Fame edition, and only if you value NBA League Pass, because then you kind of get a discount on both the game and the pass, along with some season pass stuff that you can get. It's not great, but at the very least, it doesn't feel as scummy. But there are a number of things about the game that feel scummy in recent years, and the worst representation of this is how the game manages its in-game currency called VC. Back when I started playing, VC didn't exist. You level up with skill points, and a lot of the cosmetic stuff came from finishing the Jordan challenges and other milestones. 2K13 became the first game to introduce it, and the games have stuck with it ever since. It used to be quite reasonable and easy to earn, so you could buy a bunch of stuff in the game. But things have definitely changed over the years. Almost every year, the amount of VC you can earn from dailies or other objectives has been significantly reduced. This is paired with how items and upgrading your characters has also gotten more expensive, making it a substantial grind to buy anything or upgrade your character in the game. Just to give you an idea about how much time is being consumed, Badgeplug, who is a renowned 2K content creator on YouTube, actually made a video detailing how long it would take you to get from a 60 overall to 99 without buying VCs or doing My Career. And spoiler alert, it's about 115 hours. Now, if you're an adult with a full-time job and possibly a family to support, 115 hours is a lot of time to dedicate, especially if you only have a few hours a week at best to dedicate to playing. But say you're fine with that grind. Well, now the problem is that if you're a fan of online play, many other players actually don't want to play with newer players with a low overall rating, effectively forcing you to buy VCs anyways if you don't want to be constantly left out of matches. In terms of single player stuff like My Career, it's extremely difficult to actually develop your character from a 60 overall, as you're normally matched up against actual NBA players with higher ratings, so it can be very frustrating for more casual players to actually go through the non-paid route to developing their character. Now, talking about the pricing and microtransactions will give us a good context into how much Take-Two's annual revenue actually comes from 2K, which is something we briefly touched on but never really went into detail about. According to a Wall Street Journal article in 2019, Take-Two paid around $1.1 billion to the NBA to extend their license for 7 years. Analysts claim that the amount paid ranges about 10 to 15% of the revenue gained from the game, maybe even higher. Now, if we work backwards, dividing $1.1 billion across 7 years, which is how long their licensing deal is, we get about $157 million per year. If $157 million is 15% of their annual revenue gained on the game, that brings us to around $1.05 billion a year. Now, only 2K employees are going to know the exact numbers. I could definitely be wrong, but I don't think I'm too far off considering that Take-Two earned more than $2 billion in 2019 and $3 billion in 2020. If we want to be even more nerdy about this, 2K reported that it sold about 12 million copies of 2K19. With a base price of $60, this brings us to an approximate sales revenue from just standard copies of the game to around $720 million. So with $1.05 billion as the total revenue, that brings us to around $320 million remaining, which probably came from microtransactions or the extra cost for premium copies of 2K19. That is an insane amount of money, and it only gets higher from there as Take-Two earned about $5.3 billion in 2023. Now, we talked a lot about the financials, the pricing, and VC, but these aren't the only things inflating in these games. The size of 2K18 is around 70 gigabytes. 2K25 comes in at around 150, which is about the same as the last game, but now illustrates how the game is constantly getting bigger in terms of storage allocation. Just for comparison, The Witcher 3 is 32 gigabytes on Steam. Cyberpunk 2077 with the Phantom Liberty expansion comes in at around 102 gigabytes. God of War Ragnarok is at 190 gigabytes. But if you're telling me the quality between NBA 2K and God of War are even in the same stratosphere, you're definitely messing with me. Now, the most interesting explanation for this that I've heard online came from another YouTuber called Soft Drink TV, and he claims that the 2K franchise doesn't really build its games from the ground up, contrary to what they keep saying in their marketing for the past decade. It always reuses a previous version which comes with its own bloat and then touches it up a bit because that's how you're going to feasibly launch a 2K game every single year. So you're not only going to have to worry about your wallet, but now you have to budget your storage space as well, and it's not like anything about the graphics or the gameplay actually warrants that kind of size for these games. It doesn't help as well that the representatives from 2K are constantly being dishonest about the features they're putting into these games. Many members of the community and other 2K YouTubers have already gone into detail about how Ronnie 2K in the past and now Mike Wang have constantly been talking about new animations or features or defensive stops you can do. But oftentimes a lot of what they're saying are already features in the previous games. So essentially, they don't really matter. And with all this bloat, the performance of the game also tends to suffer, and we never seem to get a 2K game that actually works smoothly for the entirety of its lifetime. The PC versions always seem to be a mess for a lot of players, with not just bugs and glitches, but also rampant amounts of cheating. And it seems like it's the same case for 2K25, but we'll get to that later. The problem is that there isn't a real solution to this, and it all comes down to the business model. I have to ask you, when was the last time you've seen another NBA game? Many older fans would of course refer to NBA Live, which is made by EA. Now off the top of your head, just a quick quiz, when was the last NBA Live published? Well, the answer is 2019, 5 years ago. Although EA initially had plans to make a 2020 NBA Live, this was cancelled as the focus shifted to the newer hardware of the PlayStation 5 and because NBA Live just couldn't compete sales-wise. NBA 2K is a monopoly. Monopolies, 99% of the time, are bad. They control prices and have very little incentive to innovate because they're the only player in town. Kinda similar to real-life basketball. Sure, you can improve a bit by doing shoot-arounds and drills by yourself, but you won't be improving to your full potential without some form of competition to push you. The natural response is twofold, and both aren't very feasible. The first is to introduce competition. This is a neat idea in theory, give 2K a competitor and it will start to make improvements. But the problem is that this comes at the sacrifice of another potential company. Licensing the entire NBA roster is incredibly expensive, which in of itself is a huge deterrent already. But let's say you could afford to do that. What then becomes the issue is the immense pressure to make a better game than 2K. With an original IP, the need to succeed is there, but there's some room for flaws if your game or concept is fun enough, and then iterate again to make improvements. Franchises like Assassin's Creed did this wherein the first game was fun, but had its flaws, and didn't become the worldwide phenomenon yet. But when AC2 got released and improved on basically every aspect of the first game, that's when it basically blew up to the franchise we now know, and unfortunately kinda despise. An NBA 2K competitor does not have that luxury. The cost of licensing and marketing to create hype and acquire market share makes it absolutely necessary for the game to not just succeed, but succeed overwhelmingly. And if by some miracle you were able to create a 2K competitor that is better in every single way, Take-Two won't just sit down and cry about it. You can best bet that they'll put up every resource they have to make 2K the better game again. Now, in theory, this sounds fantastic. Isn't this what we wanted in the first place? Sure, but there's a problem. Once there's good enough competition between products, it now becomes a war of attrition, in that year after year you have to constantly be better than your competitor. We've seen an example of the underdog rising up against the market leader with how AMD is now flooring Intel in the CPU space, but there's also a side where the leader is dominating, like how we see Nvidia beating AMD in GPUs. Take-Two is a big enough company where a war of attrition can go over in their favor, especially against a newer company. This is proven with how EA tried to wage this war with their NBA Live franchise and lost. This becomes a warning sign to other publishers to stay away from the NBA franchise, because not even EA, which is a very large publicly traded gaming company with numerous sports games already under its belt, is willing to compete anymore. What more if you're an entirely new company with no exposure to this space? Once this competitor has been pushed out, then whatever innovativeness we'll see from 2K will disappear, leaving us with the same BS we've seen for years, but now with the added bonus of a potentially bankrupt or unemployed dev team. The second option is for players to vote with their wallets, which is almost impossible. With rosters updating annually, servers closing down year after year, and 2K drip-feeding trendy content, it's going to be incredibly difficult to tell people to stop buying the game, or even to stop buying VCs or the premium editions. Many people are content with what they get annually, and that's fine. It's their money. At the end of the day, everyone has the right to play what they want to play. But because of this, it's also unlikely that any changes are going to happen. All we can argue is that things could be better and hope that somehow this year the game will be better than the last. And you know what they say about doing something over and over again, expecting things to change. 2K25 recently released with a similar price point of $70 US. Now, this game advertises itself to be the next-gen NBA 2K game, with its upgraded Pro Play feature, which supposedly ups the ante in terms of character animations, making it more realistic than past NBA 2K games, including 2K24, where Pro Play was first introduced. And if you played the last few editions, these next-gen updates definitely do not feel significant enough. There was a funny video by a YouTuber named A Rich who pointed out how 2K's marketing for new animations and moves in 2K25 can literally be done in 2K24 as well.
Throw the left stick and take a lay in the basket.
All right, look, this is obviously 2K24 we got here. I'm gonna show y'all that the shot canceling shit has been in the game since literally like 2K14. Cancel. Is that not the same animation from the trailer? Is that not the same animation from the trailer right there? Everything that's in this trailer is literally already in the game. They're talking about they built it from the ground up, nigga. This is nothing new, bro. None of that is new stuff.
Now, I've criticized the game quite a bit, and I even called it the worst game series I've ever played at the start of my video, and well, the thing is, it didn't really start off this way. I've been playing NBA 2K for a good part of 14 years now. And sure, I didn't really play all of the editions because as a teenager and then as a college student, I couldn't really afford to buy games all the time. It's very hard for me to really see how this game that I love mechanically has turned into something that's just so filled with a lot of corporate shill and greed that it makes it very difficult to recommend to anybody else. But unfortunately though, without proper competition, the best I or any other player can really do is just hope. Because I truly want a great NBA game that doesn't ooze with corporate greed, but with the way things are, it's very hard to expect things to change. Again, if you enjoy the games, that's fine. This isn't an attack against you. At the end of the day, 2K has a good game buried underneath all that greed. But for the sake of every basketball and 2K fan out there, things have to change. And Take-Two isn't going to do anything unless we stop feeding them. But let me know what you guys think down below. What do you guys think about the 2K franchise now? Do you like the new game and do you think it justifies its price? Leave a like and subscribe if you like what you see. This is Sai from Fireplace Gaming. I like to talk about a lot of games on my channel, so do check those out. And I hope you're having a really good one. Catch you later.